week 4. I have day 6 here, but actually it's day 5 for here. Day 4 was a late start, so this didn't take place. And day 5 was a snow day. So we're on day 6. Okay. Database and SQL. First thing we did is we talked about the outline materials. And we made sure people's outlines were set to comment. Need to list the sources. And I also talked about a post. When students get their outlines up to date, I'll post an example of an outline that I did. Tech Dens, we got a wiring project coming up. Advertise that pretty soon. Cyber Defense is next Saturday, 2/9. Tech Brews, Tech Talk. This goes from 11:30 until about 1:30. I'll make adjustment for students. It's the Internet of Things. That's uptown here in Mason City. We talked about change. Practice 1, practice 2. Talked a little bit about how you submit those. We reviewed some of the theories, 1, 2, and 3. They should have watched and answered the discussions, the videos and discussions. Should have done that for all 3 of those. And we reviewed Unit 1. Got a quiz on Wednesday. Talked about change, why students gave a variety of examples. In education, sometimes you have to adjust to new ways to learn. Talk about the IT field. We talked about not being able to just Google everything, even though being able to research is a good skill, but more important, if you're a problem solver, next we'll talk about grit. Learn to think. Alright. Talk about theory. We start out talking about data, bits, character, maybe representing a word, data element, or data item. There are some differences, but we're just going to, for right now, talk about mic might be a data element. And that might describe something like a student, and that could be an attribute about students, first name. Talk about static data, data that doesn't typically change much, and dynamic data, data that's, you can have a constant that changes often, or you can have a calculation. A static could be your birth date, and a calculated field could be your age. We did some examples over here. Talked about an entity table, attributes that define that entity, characteristics of the entity, often called fields. We put a bunch of these, group them together, we get tuples or records. So for example, down here we have student record, student ID, name, whatever, address. These attributes all define the student. And then the attributes have types. You know, is it a number? Is it a string? Is it a date? 3 major ones we use. Put all these together in a record, and then we can have multiple records constitute some type of file or table. Lots of tables together can give us a database, maybe even a relational database. We gave this example in Mesa City, Iowa. If these students were NIAC students, look how often that would repeat. So we said, well, you could store just the zip code, and then from the zip code that would give you city and state. Then we talked about storing things, and we said, well, we wouldn't store all the courses a student takes here. It would be very redundant, and it'd be hard to manage in a big flat file, so we could store here course ID, student ID, faculty ID. And this wouldn't have to be exactly like this. But we can build tables, and then from one table, like here, we have a primary key, might end up a foreign key up here. One way to manage our data, which is extremely popular nowadays, is to do it in some type of cloud environment, or to allow people to come in from the outside to access data. We can have this firewall that protects our internal workings, but we can allow people to go through our DMZ to access, let's say, a web server, request some information from there. The web server goes over internally to the database, gets the information, brings it back, and then distributes it back out to the user. Maybe they're coming from here. So we kind of have these lines. We have DMZ and our internal network. We don't want people in the internal network, block them, but we can allow them in this area here to access our web servers. What writes this to the disk? Software like MySQL. We have physically, we write it to the disk. We can look at our data logically, and some people have then the external view in which they just see it through their browser. We talked briefly, these are in the outline, I think in the first unit. Application developer, client server system, data, data model, database administrator, database designer, database management. Managing the data, design what the database look like. Database administrator would be responsible for all of the things dealing with the database. Design code, up here, application developer, design code to allow the browser to access data, retrieve what we need, or update data. Often talk about that working in the background. Alright. Well, that's it for today.